Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the weekly, almost weekly English shooting live stream. I hope you've all had a fantastic week or two while we've been off, and I'll make my excuses in a minute for last week. But yeah, hope you've had a shooting filled couple of past couple of weeks. So yeah, for you regulars, thanks for joining once again, and you know what the deal is. But for anybody new, this is the almost weekly English shooting live stream where we talk about all the past week or few weeks news and topics, and any conversations that you want to have are welcome. Any opinions are welcome to be heard as well. If you've got any questions, you want any discussions to come up and we want to dissect, then please use that chat box. I want to hear whether you agree, whether you disagree, where you think some things may be going, where you think maybe if you think some of these points aren't have no basis at all. Let me know what you think in that chat box. And if you're watching this afterwards, you can always use the comment section as well. Most importantly, don't forget to hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed for any future streams or videos. On that note, a weird thing happened this week. I actually filmed a video. I don't know why I filmed a video. There's like a dozen at least that I'm meaning to be editing, but I just felt like filming a video, so I did. We've also got the videos coming out very soon on the various consultations, which we will be discussing tonight. So the main bit of news, as you can see, this via the title, there have been quite a substantial increase in revocations. We've been aware of this for a while. We know that the police have been using the voluntary surrenders to sort of get certificates reduced, and we know that some firearms licensing departments do seem to have the remit of going, trying to remove firearms from private ownership rather than actually giving out the certificates to be able to own firearms, which is obviously their purpose. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. We've got BASC's full response to this massive consultation. They're saying that it's the most important consultation in 35 years. We've talked about this during the previous few live streams, and we will be touching on that again. We went through BASC's answers last time. This is an even bigger sort of response and really goes into like minute detail. We're not going to be picking through that with a fine-tooth comb on this stream. We are also going to have a little bit of a segue and try something new. I know a while back, maybe a couple of years ago, we were regularly having guests on the stream, and Connors was also joining on the stream. Well, that for various reasons wasn't kept up. I think COVID sort of got right in the middle of all of that and made it quite difficult overall. And we just went back to just myself. But I've been meaning to get on guests because that brings a bit of variety and a bit of spice to the streams, depending on how spicy those individuals are. Some will be more than others. So we will be joined by Mr. Mochaccino, aka Mr. Arian Alapor, who also does the editing for English Shooting, and you've probably seen in other videos as well, or popping up here and there on the channel, on the Facebook page. So you'll get to hear from him firsthand of how the company benefits are or lack thereof. He has been on the stream previously. So some of you long-termers will probably recognize him as well. And then we're going to be chucking in the enormous news about George Digweed. We'll talk about that, and also banks giving shooters and shooting businesses a very hard time. But we will kick it off with this little snippet. Am I going to get the right one here? I've got two videos. I've got 50-50 chance. No, that's the George Digweed one. We'll be coming back to that. We want to look at this one. Here we go. So this is from Phil Sports Channel TV, Phil Sports News. They cover very sort of field sports specific news, but they do cover a lot about firearms licensing. And I've certainly during everything going on with Plymouth, these guys have also been doing a fantastic work of coverage. So I do like to lean on them every now and then. And this is something that's been kept quite quiet, apart from seeing it here on Field Sports News. Basque says the number of, this isn't even from what I can see, but it's not even on Basque's website. Basque says the number of firearms uh, and shotgun licenses being revoked has gone up. Basque's head of firearms, Martin Parker, says the reason for the recorded numbers is almost certainly the introduction of the statutory guidance on suitability checks of certificate holders in 2021. Across England and Wales, police revoked 418 firearm certificates in 2022 to 2023. I think it usually runs March to March for anyone that wants the specifics, up from 385. So you're talking a good, what is that, 10% increase the year before, and up from 385 the year before, and the greatest number since records began in 1992. Oh my God, I'm older than the records. So a 10% increase in revocation. Now, your initial jump to conclusion might be that this is due to an increase in numbers, an increase in people getting into shooting. The trend over the past sort of 10-15 years is that the number of people that have certificates, firearm or shotguns, have gone up. The amount of guns being owned has overall gone up. But with COVID being a semi sort of, not necessarily death nail, but certainly being a big preventer of people getting into this sport, we've seen quite a big decrease. We've seen some of the biggest drop in numbers over the past couple of years into this sport. So this isn't a natural increase as there's more people, therefore the chances of a revocation goes up. No, this is actually is even worse. The amount of people have gone down, yet the revocations are going up. So it's an even more sort of disproportionate increase in revocations. Now, we've seen the tool of voluntary surrender. For those of you that are unaware, if you get into the situation where the police are asking for your certificates and your firearms here within the UK, it can go one or two ways. The first way is for them to ask you to voluntarily surrender them for the purpose of review. That is completely your choice. You can voluntarily hand them over. They will review the situation, and then they will make a decision either to hand everything back or to revoke the certificates. So it's a less formal sort of agreement or less formal process. And they've been using that tool to hold people in limbo for, been some people that have been in limbo now for over a couple of years. The revocation is the ultimate, more official route, where they go, no, we are making the decision that you are not suitable. We don't care whether you want to cooperate with us or not. We are taking those guns. And then there's a formal process where you can go and appeal that. You can go and challenge it and have your day in court. Now, because there's no formal process with the voluntary surrender, they can use that as a mechanism to just put everything on pause. Revocations do have a more structured approach. They do take some time. Well, there is some sort of time, not limit, but you're probably going to be talking, a few months to go through the whole process in terms of appealing and having that potentially overturned, whereas a voluntary surrender is technically indefinite. So we've seen an increase in the voluntary surrenders. We've seen the increase in police turning up at all weird hours of the night to ask you to voluntarily surrender. But this is now in addition. We are actually seeing an increase in the more formal, more serious process of tickets being revoked. Now, that's not a good thing, whichever way you look at it. If they are justified in doing that, then why are we only seeing this increase now? Obviously with Plymouth, there was someone that quite clearly shouldn't have had certificates or access to firearms. Are there other people like that out there that the police know all these red flags around them, and only now that they're taking it seriously as such? Or is this what everybody else has thought for a very long time? Is this a coordinated, deliberate effort to reduce the amount of firearms being owned privately? And with everything else that's been going on recently throughout COVID, with the massive reforms and consultations that we're on the brink of and that we're seeing, there seems to be this general consensus and general push from firearms licensing to try and remove as many firearms from public ownership as possible. Unfortunately, with the revocation, unfortunately, you can't do a lot about it. It is going to happen. You're sort of along for the ride, but the silver lining is that there is a formal set out process. So if you are put in that situation, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You are going to have your day in court. You will have your chance to defend whatever allegations are against you, defend whatever the police are saying about you, and you see if it goes either way. But what is so much more important when it comes to the revocation, and why the voluntary surrender can be so difficult, is that if you have legal expenses insurance, if they revoke, then you are covered through that insurance, and you will get a legal team. You will have a fully funded appeal, and this is why people like Laura Salisbury, who's the in-house counsel for the CPSA, has actually gone out and, in not so many words, said that people really need to weigh up the best option when they're asked to voluntarily surrender versus forcing a revocation. Because if you have the revocation, there's the formal process, there's the formal review, and if you have insurance, you get it fully funded. So with this increase in revocations, it is more important than ever to have legal expenses insurance. It really is fundamental to every firearms owner out there. You wouldn't buy a house and not insure it. You wouldn't drive a car and not insure it. You just don't you don't you don't not get insurance. What's the right? It's late. Um, if you are a firearms owner, if you have shotgun or firearm certificate, you must get legal expenses insurance. It's one of these things that so many people, I've seen it, witnessed it firsthand. So many people go, it will never happen to me. I've had it when I went through it. I've had people that were quite boastful about it. Oh, that's never going to happen to me. Look at you. You're this horrible, obviously this horrible person because you've had your certificates revoked. They don't do that for nothing. There must be something up. And then a couple of years later, they get their certificates revoked as well. And then suddenly they understand that in an instant, somebody can make an allegation against you, whether that's founded or otherwise. Instantly, you can find yourself in the wrong situation at the wrong time. Or you can just find yourself with a firearms licensing department that are very proactive in trying to take away certificates rather than giving them out. Do not be one of these people that sit there and say, it will never happen to me. You can be the nicest person out there. You can be the most law abiding, upstanding, never say boo to a goose person. You don't know what is around the corner. You don't know who you're going to bump into. You don't know, what you're going to end up saying, or who you're going to interact with, and you don't know where things are going to go. Even people even get the mistaken case of mistaken identities and all of that. Having legal expenses insurance in the situations of revocation not only gives you your day in court, you're now looking in the region of £5,000 to £10,000 to launch an appeal, right? And I want all of you right now to think, if tomorrow I had to come up with £5,000 to £10,000 to keep my firearm or shotgun certificates, can I do that? Could I find £5,000 to £10,000 and spend it without even thinking about it? Now, if your answer is yes, then don't get insurance. Play the game. If you're a fortunate person where you have £5,000 to £10,000 out there that you can just set on fire without really thinking about it, like, fair play, right? But I can put a pretty good guess that the majority of people watching are going, no, 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 5 to 10,000 pound is a load of money that I could do a lot more with rather than taking my local firearms licensing department to court. So if you are one of those people, go and get it now. There's a number of places that offer legal expenses insurance. The main one that I've used for years is Gunplan. They have quite a sort of robust and all-inclusive sort of insurance plan. It's something, I think, for a new member, it's like 20 or 25 quid a year. I've just renewed it. I think it was 30 or 40 quid a year. It's, in the scheme of things, it's 500 rounds of two, or 40 quid. What's that like? For 3 or 4 boxes of cartridges. Like, you put it into perspective of what you're shooting and what you're spending overall in a year, it's absolutely nothing. And of course, I do have to give a big plug. The UK PSA, we've just gone through and renewed the UK PSA's insurance. Now, previously we did have legal expenses insurance for revocation. We now have the full shebang, as does Gunplan, which it actually has failure to issue, or yeah, failure to issue or to amend. So previously, if you were a UK PSA member and you had a revocation, being a member of the UK PSA, you would get your legal expenses insurance, but now it even covers you for the application or even variation as well. So it's all encompassing. So another reason to join the UK PSA. There we go. I'll get that one in. That really needs to be pushed out online, I think. If only there was a media officer for the UK PSA about to spread such words. I'm sure we'll be hearing from him in a little bit. So yeah, I just really cannot stress enough how important it is to get legal expenses insurance through Gunplan, through the UK PSA. I think Country Cover Club, the 3Cs does it. The National Game Keepers Association organization does. Like, there's just so many out there. There's just no excuse, and they are not expensive at all. So yeah, it's, in the scheme of things, yes, we're seeing an increase. We've seen this roughly 10% increase in revocation. Is it? Should we all be absolutely losing our minds? I don't think so. In the scheme of things, there are 600,000 certificate holders. For 400 being revoked, the number is quite small. But is it worth the risk? There's people that play the lottery every single weekend that are playing against far larger odds than that. Get insurance. I don't think trends like this are ever going to go down. We're only going to see an increase in the amount of revocations. It is an interesting point, though, that Martin Parker says about this statutory guidance. Now, what he's referring to here, and again, we've covered this so much on the channel, is this document here: Firearms Licensing Statutory Guidance for Chief Officers of Police. And this document is, in some ways, it's needed. It gives more structure, more guidance to the police in terms of what they should be doing, what they should be looking for, how they assess somebody's suitability. It gives them, more of a framework, but it's not detailed enough. And there are so many things in here that are scary. Right. And one of the big ones that always sticks with me in here, I won't go and find it, but it was one of these things that says, like, even if you have been accused of a crime and found innocent, they can still use that against you and revoke your certificate or refuse your application. So you've gone through the formal process of having your court date. You've been judged by your peers. You've been found not guilty. You are innocent, and just the fact that you've ended up in court is enough by this document for them to refuse your application or to even revoke your certificates. And in terms of this continuous assessment, if you wanted sort of any more uh, sort of proof in terms of how easy it is for them to revoke or seize your guns. Where a chief of police has serious concerns about certificates holder continued access to firearms, prompt action is to be taken to ensure no preventable harm is caused to public safety. The thing is, when they say serious concerns, that's incredibly open. That's open to interpretation. What somebody might think is a serious concern, somebody else might not. So again, whilst this gives some sort of guidance, it's not really that prescriptive. In terms of the trap that we see with the voluntary surrender, following surrender or seizure of firearms, a full review should be carried out as soon as practical. So in terms of here, it's very much action is to be taken, like you will do it. And in terms of actually reviewing and giving it back, it should be done. You can see the difference in language. You can see where it's stacked up against. In terms of taking things away, it will happen. In terms of giving it back, it might. Like that's the flavor of language that they are using. In other news as well, something that's incredibly important, and I keep harping on about it. I'm going to put the link in the chat box now. There's no excuse, especially after Basque's answer. Well, maybe you've got one excuse. I'm still yet to do a video on it, but that will be coming out very, very soon, I promise. There is, of course, this massive consultation. When I say massive, like it's only a few questions. It's massive in terms of its seriousness to shooting sports. Firearms licensing recommendations for changes. So follow that link. You'll go to here, and then you will see this consultation. This could have an absolutely profound, massive effect on firearms licensing and firearms ownership here within the UK. And I really cannot stress enough and urge you enough to go and fill this out and to go and read it and take it seriously. Again, Basque is hailing this as the biggest consultation we've had in 35 years. So if you're sick to death of seeing consultations, if you really don't think it makes any difference at all, and you've only got one left in you, you go for this one. Go and do it. But Basque have been releasing more and more information, and more recently they not only released their answers. Let me just find that quickly for you guys. So yeah, this is what we went into quite some depth the other week, is Basque's answers. So you've got your quick fire there, like literally, as much as there are some that I disagree with on this, if you can't be asked to wait for the video from this channel, if you can't even be bothered to think, even though they're yes no questions, I would much rather people just go and copy this, right? If you're going to put something, just put that, right? That is going to be better than nothing. If you want more detailed explanation of why those answers from Basque, you can then go down to here and read these. And then if you want even more detail, then you can look at this: firearms licensing and consultation on recommendations for changes made to the Home Office June to August. Don't be one of these people that think, oh, we've got plenty of time, I'll put it off. Go and do it. And this is pretty in depth. I really need some time to actually go through and pick this apart. I'm sure there's going to be even more interesting data and information here to pick through and to check out. So if you want to check this out, it's on the Basque website. You can go there. I'll put this in. Oh no, this is a different. Yeah, no, this is it. This is the main article. Changes to firearm legislation must be evidence-based, Basque tells Home Office. It is a pretty obvious statement, isn't it, Basque? Right? Any changes to law must be evidence-based. And I mean, maybe that says more about the lawmakers when it comes to firearms legislation. Like, you actually have to proactively remind them that it should be evidence-based, that it should be logical, that it should be rational, reasonable, and proportionate. Like that's where we are with firearms legislation here in the UK. Like, just trying to get something logical out of them is bad enough, especially when they are trying to take so much away continuously. So yeah, really cannot stress how important it is to go and check out, go through those links, go and read it through, go check it out, because this whole thing with increased revocation, the statutory guidance, the reform to firearms licensing, we're going to see more and more, just not just these changes to our laws around, say, shotgun and all of that. We're going to see there's a real wave of change, and if we're not careful, if we're not um, we don't keep an eye on it and we don't stay on top of it, could very easily change it's always the general trend is that it's going to change for the worse, but it could change much faster than is healthy for this sport. At the moment, we tend to stay on top of things. We tend to stay ahead of things. Look at the long barrel pistols, right? Yes, I'm not going to say that long barrel pistols are in any way close to a full bore handgun, but we find a way. Nature finds a way. Even within practical shooting, when they removed handguns, well, mini rifle popped up, and then practical shotgun got really big. So we just need more time. If things are going to change, over time for the worst, we just need to, at the very least, slow it down enough so that we can stay ahead of it, that we can adapt the sport, we can change the sport so that there is still a sport here. And all of these people just say, oh, there's going to be nothing left in 50 years. There will still be something here. There is far too much money and power when it comes into the various shooting industry, within the shooting industry and within shooting disciplines, for it to go completely. And especially whilst overall we have places like Canada, New Zealand, even Australia, that again seems to be closing in the net on firearms owners. There are places across the world, not too far away, that are opening that net. Look at the Czech Republic. So there are, as much as you can find an example where things are getting worse for firearms owners, there are a growing number of examples where things are getting better and are certainly more encouraging and certainly becoming more logical. So I think just the way the world is at the moment, it's very bad for gun owners overall. But things go in cycle. We may be talking in 5-10 years about, I'd like to remain hopeful that maybe the discussion of legalizing handguns for sport may at some point even come up in a political discussion, on a senior political discussion. All the time that it's still in the Olympics, I think we have to hold on to that hope. So there we go. You've got a few things to go and do. Make sure that you check out those links, that you go and fill in the survey. And a big reminder as well, hit that like button. If you're watching and you are enjoying this stream, then make sure that like button is hit. It's literally right there. We've got like double the amount of people watching than liking. And if you're watching and not liking, why are you sticking around? So if you are sticking around, hit that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. Let's have a quick whiz through the comments before we bring on the first guest that we've had for a very, very long time. David Kiddle, anyone here serve in the Falklands War? Thoughts on today's EU insisting on calling it Malvinas? Terrible. Not. I can get the sort of the link, the shooting link, perhaps, but I don't know. That's very political of you, David. You got to be careful. There's a lot of people on here that and myself included, that does not need a lot of encouragement to get pretty heated. Has Callum got a toothbrush in his right ear? Yes, it would seem so. What you have to understand is, when you bring a guest on, you need to be able to hear them. Usually when conducting an interview and talking to a guest, being able to hear them is usually beneficial and conducive to to having the guest on. So I need to be able to hear it. That's why I've got that. I had hoped that perhaps by keeping that side of my face, it wouldn't be as obvious, but well spotted. Tom D, show of hands, how many have not yet completed the firearms consultation? No hands here. There's a lot of older people who just don't bother now. It's about getting younger people into shooting, so it makes sense to revoke by voluntary. Yeah, there seems to be a fair amount of apathy in talking to people that have had some sort of issues of this general consensus of people going, well, is it worth it? Is it worth continuing if everything's stacked up against us, and you know we can't shoot handguns anymore, and things seem to get more expensive. Like, but look at anything, right? I'm sure you look at any aspect of life. People that are into cars, they make it more and more expensive and more difficult to go and drive your car. As I found out, apparently the low emission zone up in Glasgow is run by the former Nazi party. Like, usually you go to Birmingham, yeah, pay us our £7.50. Yeah, all right. It's a stealth tax. I get that. Glasgow, no, you're not coming in. 60 quid fine. Like, so everyone has their difficulties in their hobby. Things become more expensive. People are attacked. We do like to dwell a lot on the we do have maybe a bit more of a hard time compared to other hobbies, but the what's the expression, the squeeze is worth the peel, or the juice is worth the squeeze, or whatever, whatever the saying is. Basically, it's worth it. You like, again, like, people that sit there and go, oh, it's so difficult, it's so hard, they're all against us. Yeah, yeah, try not having a certificate for 7 years. Try having your certificate revoked and not giving back for 7 years, and then deciding that you want to go full, make your career full time firearms industry. I really have very little time for people that want to sit there and go how hard it is to get a certificate, or how hard it is to get into shooting, or how hard it is to maintain shooting. Because I think it's fair to say I probably have the hardest time of most, and if I can do it, so can you. And that's probably why certain departments don't like me so much. Shining example of, actually, as long as you can follow the A to B processes, as long as you know what the exemptions are, which I'm so passionate of sharing and showing to you guys, you can continue doing it. I know you mentioned it, but you never got around to making that video, as well as MedCert alternatives. Absolutely, I will try and do that. I know there's a lot of people. I will make a note. Med cert. Oh, that actually sort of slots in nicely with the getting your FAC series. So I think I've touched upon it, but maybe uh, not fully on the alternatives. James, how do these UK PSA postal leagues work? Well, usually it's done by an affiliated club. Again, I'm not responsible for the postal leagues. It's actually Paul Wyborn that is. Basically, I believe you have to have and I think members can nominate. Arian might know more about it when we're talking a little bit about it in a bit. But basically, you have I don't know if it's an affiliated club or just members, but you will have like a nominated, what do they call it? Like, basically a nominated RO who is responsible for collecting all of the scores, collecting all of the data and all of that. And basically, you set up the stage in your own club. You can do it technically like in your garden for some of them, like Action Air. You do the stages, you time them, and it's an honesty thing. You've got to be honest about it. You submit your scores, and everybody else does that at the end of the year. Whoever wins the league, it's a nice trophy. There's a really simplification of it, but it's meant to be as easy and accessible as possible. It's not meant to use a lot of targets, a lot of space. And if you are limited in terms of space and targets, there can be some sort of changes and exceptions made to help facilitate your club. Major Jim, I have Gunplan, but would like to get another for extra cover. Any recommendations? Yeah, again, Country Cover Club, I think, has it. The NGO has it. UK PSA have it. CPSA, I've seen a number of people saying about CPSA And I actually dropped my CPSA membership because I sort of found what I thought was technically a get around. The CPSA only gives legal expenses legal expenses insurance for shotgun certificates. However, my assumption was that if you have a coterminous, it's one certificate, right? It's a shotgun and it's a firearm certificate. So if they revoke, and usually if they revoke a certificate anyway, they're going to revoke both, right? They're going to revoke both the shotgun and both the firearm certificate. And my thinking was that if they do revoke both, then the CPS, they've revoked a shotgun certificate, so therefore the legal expenses insurance kicks in from the CPSA to get that shotgun certificate back. And if you get the shotgun certificate back, then you would get the firearm certificate back. And basically, it's been confirmed, by Laura, who's also actually my solicitor, that it doesn't quite work like that. So the CPSA is not the cheapest out, is £60 or £80 a year. And I just thought if I'm at all in doubt that it would actually do what I need it to do in that situation, then why am I paying 60 or 80 quid a year? At the end of the day, I'm a full member of the UK PSA and I've got gun plan. I'm double covered anyway. And actually we have insurance with the business as well, that would potentially kick in addition. So there's lots out there. If you are purely a shotgun shooter, then the CPSA will suffice. If it's just a shotgun certificate you have, I would recommend the CPSA. The reason that I recommend it is because Laura Thornsbury is one of, if not the best firearms solicitors in the country, and her partner Nick Doherty is also one of, if not the best, firearms specialist barristers within the UK. So with CPSA membership, you get access basically to the best solicitor and barrister out there. And on David Kiddle, conkers have been banned before firearms. That is very, 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 very true. On that note, is he ready? Arian, can you give me the thumbs up if you're ready? And he's disappearing. Oh, he seems okay. We're going to bring on our guest. You'll have to let me know what you think of this. I like this idea of bringing somebody in for part of the stream. Just give a little bit of difference. Again, I'm fairly new to this software, so luckily Arian knows it inside and out, I suppose. So if I get lost, I can lean on him. So just as a little bit of an introduction, guys. I'll be here all night if I get on to all of the various things involved. So let's just bring Arian on, aka Mr. Mochaccino.
I'm a small guy.
You're very small, aren't you?
Do you want me to fix that, or shall I let you?
Go. I've got it. I'm a pro.
Cool. I'm facing away from you. You're facing away from me.
Yeah. How do you?
You just drag.
There we go. I've got this.
Nice.
So again, I would ask you to tell everybody what you do, what you're involved with. Just try to make it as short as possible.
Cool. Hi, I'm Arian. I'm also one of the editors. You're still supposed to be an editor for EnglishShooting. I also edit for other channels, but we'll keep that hush hush because EnglishShooting. I also am the media and stats officer for the UKPSA, so there's a lot of work going on there. And I shoot. So yeah, I think that's the shortest I can make it.
Well, let's poke a little little deeper in there, because I tend to use you and Paul as examples for quite a lot. Well, I say quite a lot. I tend to use you as examples quite a lot for gateways into shooting, right? And both you and Paul started in the airsoft action air sort of area of shooting, and then practical shooting.
Yep.
And it's only been in the last year or two that both of you've actually got firearm certificates and have gone on to live fire shooting.
Yeah, we've jumped way ahead of you, Callum.
Right,
sorry,
that's the knife there.
That's the only jab I'm making. Because otherwise, you're just going to cut me off. Anyway,
never.
What was I going to say?
I wouldn't dream of it.
So if you want, I'll give my history. I think Paul should come online at some point and give his. But yeah, I originally, when I started getting into pulling the trigger, as you call it, in paintball. So I used to be a Delta Force paintball marshal when I was young, when I was lanky and skinny as hell. And then I went to uni and I had a foot injury. So I started playing airsoft. And that kind of leads in because I graduated, didn't have time to play airsoft. And then a friend of mine from uni said, "Hey, there's a local club. We shoot action air. Don't know if you've heard of it. It's competitive. It's slightly different. You don't shoot each other. You actually shoot targets, and it's very, very more. It's more modern in the way that it's done, etc. And it mimics handgun sports. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll try it. I got hooked. 3 years later, I'm shooting internationally, only action air, obviously. And I felt, hey, I kind of want to actually no. This is big up for American Shooting Trips. That's now called Shooting Travel Club. Is that I went on a trip as just a media journalist, just someone to take pictures and record what it's like to Utah in 2018. And this was after you had gone the previous year, and it was amazing. I was shooting handgun, shotgun rifle. Obviously, you could shoot shotgun in the UK, but I hadn't experienced that yet. So everything was being experienced in the US. And I loved it. And I was doing really well because of my airsoft and my action air side. And people were quite happy and surprised, as most people are with Paul these days. And from that, I thought I want to get a coterminous shotgun and firearm certificates because I want to get into mini rifle at first, then do LBP and shotgun, although those might swap around depending on what happens this year. And yeah, I actually waited to get my certificate, and I didn't realize COVID was coming because I was still living with my parents. As you know, buying a house takes time. So I finally got that house in 2019, and I started applying, and then guess what happens?
Well, it's another example that I say to people. People put it off and put it off and put it off. Oh, I'll wait until I'm in a better situation. Oh, it's going to be a faff if I'm living with my parents and I'm going to move out and I'm going to have to get it. No, get it sooner or later, because you don't know what's going to be around the corner, what's going to hold it up. But your that sort of shooting journey is why I get so frustrated with the snobbery that we can sometimes have in shooting sports. There's this hierarchy of snobbery, which is, if you're not doing this, then you're below us. And let's face it, I think probably airsofters get the brunt of it in terms of the snobbery, certainly from certificate holders, from live fire shooters. This whole notion of playing action men. Which is a phrase I hear quite a lot.
From my perspective, it's actually more quiet. It's not actively pushed towards the airsoft community as such.
Right.
You do get members here and there who play airsoft to go, "Oh, I shoot real stuff. Blah, blah, blah. I can shoot real steel," which is the coin term for shooting anything that's an actual firearm as opposed to a replica. And yeah, yes, maybe in the shooting community, in the more firearm side of the community, it is more, oh, they play airsoft, they're playing make-believe, etc. And to a certain extent, depending on how hard they play airsoft, there is that stigmatism of you're playing soldier, why don't you go into the army, why don't you join the reserve, stuff like that. But on the other side of it, it's quite interesting because even airsofters push back in a way, but you don't hear it in the firearms community, where airsoft is like, oh, why do you want a real firearm? Why do you want to do this? You can do it with airsoft and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, but it's different. They're completely different.
I've not thought about it. The sort of reverse, people like the airsofters sort of looking at the real firearms owners going, almost like anti-gunners going, why would you ever want a real gun?
There are anti-gun airsofters. No, there are anti-gun airsofters. They don't believe. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's just ridiculous, but it does show, there is this growing pathway. Certainly, obviously, we're very this channel is very practical heavy, so I always bring it down to UK PSA and IPSC, and we are just seeing this like sort of reaffirmed gateway through. And I hate using action air as a gateway, like using the gateway term on it, because it is its own sport. It's its own discipline. And I challenge anybody that thinks it's just running around with toys. I challenge them to compete against yourself and Paul. They're going to find out very, very soon.
I'm rusty. I am super. Even you could beat me right now. I'm so rusty.
Okay, or Paul then, right?
Yeah, just
like,
Paul.
Because it doesn't
just
matter.
Paul.
Paul on a fucking bad day does not. Yeah, he's still gapping people 20%
Yeah,
easily.
he has to have a hangover for me to even get close.
He is, yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you know, when I started competing in it, again, you would go into it like this, this sort of BB guns, airsoft guns, and you look at the speed is just turned up to 12, but it is turning into this gateway as well. People are starting off in airsoft. They're starting off in action air. It is more accessible, you know, because you don't need a license to do it. Yes, there's that whole Yakara and all of that, but anybody that's not a prohibited person can just turn up to a site and be given an airsoft gun to go skirmishing, or be given an airsoft gun to go and compete in action air. So it's so much more accessible. Another thing as well is parents are going to be less trepidous about letting their kids, certainly younger kids, running around with a BB gun, or, you know, shooting a BB gun, than a real live fire. So, you know, as you've demonstrated with, you know, that very natural transition of only ever shooting airsoft. I didn't know actually you hadn't shot any real guns within the UK before you went out there. But going out to the US, and I remember seeing the videos, you know, it was just grip a bit harder and away you go. The fundamentals you had learned from airsoft. It's interesting as well. You say about, you know, you got into the competitiveness, and that's what I found in my own journey. You sort of plinking and just shooting just for the fun of it, like entertains me so much. But having that drive of competition, it gives more purpose. So what is it that drives you to, you know, you've taken up these new disciplines, you're still competing, well, you're competing at, you know, a growingly higher level in those disciplines. What's driving you at the moment?
It's interesting you're saying about shooting for fun. I'm yet to experience shooting for fun. It's always been either training or competing. I kind of miss the. That's a lie. I have experienced it. We went to the States and we experienced a lot of it, which was fun. But other than that, honestly, I don't think I've ever picked up a firearm for fun. It's always been to compete, to practice, to improve my skill, to be on the leaderboard. I'd like to, for example, go clay pigeon shooting one time and just do it for fun. There's so many elements of the firearms community that I've not touched. I've only touched practical. And for example, I've just joined the club. I'm going through the probation slide again. It's probably my 4th or 5th club now. I should probably start thinking about not joining any more clubs. And yeah, there's like gallery rifle I haven't experienced before. 2-2 sporting obviously is quite easy, simple, but it's still, there's certain elements of basic shooting practice, like breathing, etc. I don't practice, because when it comes to practical, the buzzer goes off and you just need to get 2 shots on the paper target in the right place as quickly as you can, or shoot that steel, and Bob's your uncle. It doesn't matter how accurate you are, as long as you're persistently, consistent
I don't know. I think there's an oversimplification there.
To a certain extent, yeah. Just because I don't think about it doesn't mean I don't do it. It just means I don't practice it. It's different.
No, well,
practice is more natural.
I'm completely there on the lack of practice. You know, a lot of you know, working full time and you know, being around firearms every single day. The comment is always made like, Jesus, you must do so much shooting. You must be always at the range. And it's like, no, it's the complete reverse. I do less shooting now than I ever did. To the point where, you know, the only shooting, I think somebody said, where do you normally go to shoot between matches? And I laughed. It's, you know,
laughed at yourself.
Well, I laughed at them. What do you mean? Shooting between matches? I just turn up to a match and I shoot. But I always found that. So when I moved into practical, I found the best training was matches. And the clubs, you know, Kentucky Firearms Club, Phoenix is where I sort of started practical shooting, but it was Kentucky Firearms Club, KFC, which we're both members of, where I really fell in love with practical shooting. But both of them would very rarely have like training days. It was just match after match, and you just get more match experience. And I think that is the best practice, is getting as much match experience as possible.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's not worth it. There's no point neglecting matches, no matter what they are. It's like I've recently this year decided to start shooting NRA matches as well, and the
Right.
reason for that is for practice.
Yep.
Yes, there might be the occasion where I do really well, which I have, but it's more the fact that there's a variety there. And yes, I do have to think about the fact that they are using IPSC rules, but it's not as strong. It's not as to the book. There are certain changes in the rules that they make, which is fine. It may be depending on the range. It might be depending on who's hosting the match. But it's still practice. And I agree with you. Yes, you can practice at your local club, do practical stuff, but there's a limitation there. Going to a match where someone has put so much effort in to put up stages, to get ROs, to put you through those stages, you make the most of it, because if you don't, and everyone goes through that mentality of not doing it, matches are going to stop existing. People are not
Yes.
going to host them. And
Well,
that's a
you're
problem we're
seeing that
having.
with Action Air.
Yes,
Like
we are.
we've seen that this past year, 2 level 3s cancelled, which is like, it's unheard of. It's in the time that I've been shooting IPSC, I've not heard of level 3s being cancelled. We've had Wales. Wales hasn't been cancelled; it's been postponed. So I won't necessarily put that in the same category. There's also other factors at play with the Welsh shotgun. But yeah, Action Air, I think it's because all you guys, you've got your firearm certificates now, and it's not it's like Ali Mustard as well. He's he was somebody that was devout Action Air that I knew
He
as
still
solely from Action
is.
Air.
No, he still
but
is.
but then he's now at all the shotgun matches.
He's just adding to his portfolio like I am.
Right. But
Yeah.
you can only spread yourself so thin, and I think maybe that's what we're seeing, is actually Action Air has probably done too good of a job of introducing people into real firearms ownership, and people are like, well, I can't do 4 or 5 disciplines, right? I have to narrow it down.
I agree with you. What I've seen from my perspective is that Action Air has done a really good job of bringing people into the other disciplines. And I think COVID's really stunted it, because it stopped us from seeing a flow of people coming in. And
Sure.
those who do come in, they look at the stuff that goes bang more than the stuff that gets them into the stuff that goes bang. And I feel like because of COVID, the frequency and the saturation of people who are likely to get into shooting sports is more concentrated. People who are very specifically looking at mini rifle or shotgun are coming in, as opposed to people who are generally interested in practical shooting and see Action there as a gateway.
That's a very good point. Again, I don't want to just permanently label Action Air as the gateway sport, but that I've not thought about that before as well. That in terms of the impact. If we're going to just label Action Air as the gateway
You're
sport,
gonna have to. I
where
wrote an
people
article on it, and it's an IPSC world, so I've screwed myself with that.
so that's where people are starting. Predominantly, that's where people are starting off. If you have a dip in new people coming into the sport, like during COVID, a discipline like Action Air is going to be, disproportionately effective. If the majority of people there are new shooters, and then suddenly you lose that influx of new shooters, then of course, you're going to see a bigger drop off. So, it's working too well at getting people into the live fire shooting, so they're going so the experienced, well-rounded shooters are like sort of leaving it, and you don't have that influx of new shooters or younger shooters to sort of to fill that gap. I mean, even like Sasha, Sasha's, he's been written about in IPSC. He's been in a lot of videos of coverage. He's a very accomplished sort of pistol shooter, and isn't he like 12 or 14 now?
He was. I think COVID's made us kind of skip a few years.
Or is he like
I think
he's like 19 with a mortgage now?
There are a few people I've shot with over the years, and I'm like, wow, you've grown up, and I'm like, damn, I'm old. What's happened? It's been a decade. What's going on? I think Sasha is 16, 17. I think he's
Okay,
just
16,
over
17.
the Super Junior. Yeah, he's not Super Junior anymore. That's for sure.
The EHC was so the European Handgun
Last
Championships
year's,
in
yeah.
Serbia. That was
I
2008,
16.
2018. Let me
Oh, okay. Yes,
EHC.
the one that was filmed. Yeah.
So
Um,
well, you say the one that was filmed, the one
I
that
don't know
I filmed.
how the contracted filming of EHC in 2018.
It was done by, you know, that lesser known channel Gunroom TV.
No comment.
Let me just find it. How can I do screen share with this
Yeah,
at the
you can
same
do
time?
screen share. Yeah,
How
yeah.
does that work?
You just do that, and we both
Oh
end
wow!
up. I'm actually gonna
Can
move
I still have
this.
us all together?
Oh
No.
God, what have you
Oh,
done?
there we go.
There
Let's
you
move
go.
you.
That's
See
probably better. Oh, hi. You're nearly
that.
there.
Wait, can I make that
There you
one?
go.
There
There
we
you go.
go.
I just had to
Hello.
help.
It's the one time that you want
Okay.
to the one time that you're going to be underneath me. Savor it.
Oh, really? Just the one time? I'll
Just the
keep that.
one
I'll hold you
time.
to that.
Let me European hand.
Calm. I'm feeling quite squashed here.
Squash what?
Nothing. Just little jabs. Just little jabs.
Let me. Here we go. So it was this. This was the. I'm. Oh my god! I've got sound. Share this tab instead. This was. I think this is the full highlights.
Okay,
Wait,
I'm
how's
actually
that
going to
looking?
make us smaller because that needs.
There we go. That works.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was. I'm going to see if I can find Sasha. He's actually. I know where he will be. Are the shoot-offs? No.
Day 4 is a good video.
They're all good videos. What are you talking about? So what I was looking, it was 2019. So that was 4 years ago. So if you're saying he's like 17, he would have been 13 here. I saw some Great Britain.
It's hard to say yes or no, but he was definitely.
There he is.
Yeah, he looks 13, 14. Yeah, he looks older now, obviously.
But anyway, so Sasha. So again, people. It's turned into a massive plus for Action Air here. But Sasha started in Action Air, right? And everyone going, oh, you know, you can't pick anything from Action Air. It's got to be the real thing, right? Sasha was the highest placing Brit.
Yes,
for
he was.
Yeah. Right. So, and there weren't like bad shooters there, right? There were some pretty good shooters from the UK, and he wiped the floor with them, right? You know, there he is.
It's the gun looks huge.
Yeah, the gun looked massive compared to him, and he did so well. He ended up in the shoot-offs. I think he ended up placing in the shoot-offs. So that would mean that not only was he the highest performing Brit, ducking for that brass there. Not only was he the highest performing Brit, but he was the only Brit to walk away with some trophy, with some silverware or glassware or whatever they were, what they were handing out. So yeah, it's another advocacy there for.
Yeah, he started with Action Air. Yeah.
It's all changed again.
There we go. Do you prefer this, or do you want that?
Do we prefer
I don't know. You're more pixelated than I am. Weirdly,
am I?
Are you?
Why is yours so?
I'm using an APS-C camera. I'm using a cheapo camera. No.
So we're dwelling a lot on. I won't say necessarily your past, right? Because your action is still the present for you, right? But what guns do you currently have? What is in your collection?
What is in my safe?
Yes. We need to, actually.
My
that is a series.
not in my safe, but that's a good idea.
I did used to do the series of the videos of what's in my safe.
Yes, you did.
People always love those. I love doing those as well because you get to see some really, really cool stuff. So what is in your safe? Of course, because of YouTube, you can't show us.
No, I can't unless I did something miraculously funny.
Levitate it.
Well, the idea was to quickly take a picture and put it on on the software and then just show it. So do you want me to just do firearms, or technically action?
Let's just do firearms. I more want to lead you in the conversation of aero versus battle arms, but we'll get onto that naturally.
Might actually buy battle arms for different reason. Anyway, so I started on my journey the second I got my firearm certificate, buying a 1522, secondhand 1522, which already had a CMC trigger on it, and that was my first invitational to do mini rifle with my own firearm, which was great.
And I believe it was that gun was it. I know where you decided you were getting rid of that. That was Carlisle, wasn't it?
No,
Carlisle.
it was when did I decide to get rid of it? It was at Dartford. No, not Dartford. Sorry,
Dartford.
Not Dartford.
Basildon.
Sorry, it was.
You mean Basildon?
Basildon. There we go. Sorry, why did I get those two mixed up?
I swear it was. I have this image of Carlisle match again. There's a video on the channel of it. This was 2021. 2021 or 2022? Would have been early 22 if it was 22. I think maybe. Anyway, who knows? I just have this image of you like walking to the next stage with your gun with a really like frowned face when I was like, what's wrong? And I was like, well, I've just found out what everybody talks when everyone talks about the flexing of a 1522.
It was Basildon.
It was Basildon.
I did.
Was Carlisle the first match with the aero?
It was actually, yeah. It was.
Okay, that's
why
the
miscoms were.
In that case, you still had an issue at Carlisle.
I
still have this image of you at Carlisle holding your gun, not being happy.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what happened at Carlisle. See, I should film all my matches. We should film all our matches, is what I should have said. No, what happened was, I don't know if it was Wales or started at Basildon. I wasn't happy because I did so everything seemed fine with my rifle. I shot the longest stage we had, and I shot it 2 seconds faster than everyone else. This is from memory, so I'm probably wrong, but I shot it very fast, and people were like, that was really good. And we were shooting at micros, and guess what? I got loads of mics, and I was wondering, how did I get loads of mics? Because I know where I was putting my shot placements. And after I realized that I put heavy flex on the barricades, and I was bending my 1522 receiver. And I realized at that point, it's like, this is not working out for me because I am very aggressive with mounting my rifle against barricades. And at the time,
you're an aggressive mounter. We have it on camera.
And we know who the victim is next to me.
You're 1522. Just like so on that, we've touched on it on the channel. So it's why I am one of the biggest advocates for the 1522 out there.
I still recommend it.
Yeah, for the money, it cannot be beaten. But it is a polymer. It's a polymer receiver set, right? And it wasn't the fact that 1522s were winning mini rifle for quite a long time. It was the gun to go to, but then we saw this trend of like bigger, like farther and further distances and micros. So longer distance and micros. So that longer range precision really started to come into it, and it wasn't like the 1522 has always been a bad gun, and everyone suddenly it's a shock that it's this really bad gun. It was just it had never been put into that environment, and it exposed this flaw that for the longest time I had no idea about.
I agree, and I made it worse because when I did get my 1522, I converted the handguard. Obviously meant that the barrel was being redone and stuff like that. So one of the reasons I had such troubles, and this was noticed after Basildon in Wales, was that my barrel wasn't seating properly. So small vibrations were causing my shots to go all over the place. And these were on full-size targets as opposed to micros. So I was like, something's really wrong here. I'm definitely looking dead center in the center of this target. And people are like, it's the optic you're using. And I think for Basildon, I was using the vector optics that Caliber gave me at the time. And at Wales, I was using a sight mark. And people go, sight mark's rubbish. And I don't think sight mark's actually rubbish. I think sometimes the QC goes offhand. But even then, I was like, it can't be the sight mark because I'm getting good shots and bad shots with the same placement and everything. So yeah, it was from then that we found out what the issue was. The 1522 needed to be, the barrel needed to be reseat, etc. But even after that, I still knew that the receiver was going to be a limiting factor. And for me, based on how I shoot, I need to remove that factor. I didn't want to learn to work with it. And that's where I went,
Well,
okay.
that's it. The sort of the simple solution is, don't brace against the barrel, right?
Yeah.
But it's easier said than done. My shooting style is I try not to brace as much as possible. Like I don't think in a sanctioned mini rifle match I've ever attached a. Oh no, I tell you what, I have attached a bipod in a sanctioned IPSC mini rifle. That was the last stage of that match.
Which match was this?
That was Basildon 22.
Oh God, yeah.
Yep.
The one where you might not release a video.
Yeah. No, that video is actually in edit.
Is it? Oh.
But yeah, basically the first time I use a bipod in a mini rifle match, I get TQ'd while using the bipod. So you can see why I'm a bit reserved about using hesitant of using a bipod. So yeah, the 1522, it's not a bad gun, but certainly when you put aftermarket, that's why the magload handguard is specifically designed for the 1522, because it doesn't introduce that additional flex, and it actually helps to help mitigate that. And you ended up switching to the Aero, a Cotswold Classic Arms Aero build.
Yeah, I contacted Otto and said, hey, I want to move over to a full metal receiver. And I did tell him that I didn't like the battle arms looks as much. And he was like, fine, fair enough. We've got the arrows. And I'm like, it's funny you say that, because last night I went to IWA, Aero Precision was showing these amazing rifles next to Rainier Arms. And it was quite hard to not want to go to Rainier Arms. And I thought, do you have an arrow available? And he was like, wait a week. I'm like, wait a week? Normally it takes months. What do you mean wait a week? So I waited a week, and he came back to me and said, what does this look like? He just took a picture of a rifle on the floor. I'm like, there's no feet pics here. I'm a bit confused. How are you levitating over this wide angle shot of this rifle? That was the first thing I said to him, not, oh, that looks good, I want that. I said, so what's the deal? Don't you normally have to wait for someone to get all the parts made and stuff? It's like, well, this was meant for someone and they don't want it anymore. I'm like, gold. I'm going to be the
perfect timing,
quickest processed sale he's ever made.
So was it purely the aesthetics that didn't? Because I was going to ask, why didn't you go for the battle arms? Was it purely the looks of it?
It was purely the looks of it.
Okay, that's so very
function wise. I would recommend a battle arms.
Okay,
and a hands down, if I really want to win matches without the caveat of needing to make changes to my rifle to do the functions that at the pinch of a minute you can make use of, such as having ambidextrous controls, I just didn't see the point of the battle arms, and I didn't want to go to the point where I had such a light rifle, and the arrows to me felt more traditional. It's weird that I'm saying traditional. I'm looking at a competitive rifle that's gonna, at the moment it's all black, but I'd be willing to turn it into like a Tron Legacy looking rifle of some sort.
We've actually had off camera, we've had quite in-depth discussions.
We still need a video, by the way, of like different ways of applying ourselves to the sport.
At the end of the day, I've always said to people, no matter what, practical shooting, rifle, shotgun, handgun, whatever, if it works, right? There's a lot of things. You look at Jerry Michalak, or you look at Eric Graffel, or Lena Michalak, or like all the superstars of our sports, like the top of the top. Even nice sort of warming up to the segue a bit later, George Digweed. I'm sure if you get a panel of 10 experts and you get them to watch every single shot that they take in a competition, they will find things that aren't traditional, that aren't that aren't by the book, or what would be instructed, what would be what would be taught in terms of the agreed upon standard, right? because people shoot differently. People have different body types. People have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's about maximizing yourself as a shooter. And my thing has always been speed. This is really interesting as well because you're quite a speed shooter.
I don't think I am anymore.
But certainly
Yeah,
coming from the Action Air,
from
like
Action
you're,
Air, I had all the speed and none of the
yeah,
accuracy, and I feel like Paul shared that issue earlier in his time getting into mini rifle.
yeah,
Although it didn't stop him at Evely. Evely is his match. But yeah, it's interesting because I came in thinking as long as the dot is on target and I'm not dealing with parallax, I will hit the target. If I
hmm
trail, I trail, but at least it'll be on the target. And that the issues I have with the 1522 kind of diminished that result, but also made me think more about precision and accuracy, making the shot once and making it count as opposed to making multiple shots, which actually I learned in Action Air quite early on because I realized there were people who did shoot 3 times at the target, did it
yeah,
really quickly. But sometimes those 3 times didn't even amount to two alphas. It amounted to an alpha and a Charlie, and the third one was still a Charlie.
hmm
So it was about trying to find that balance. It's always been the case with practical shooting. It's always finding the balance between accuracy and speed. And I'm still learning that in mini rifle. What I thought I had mastered in Action Air has become new ground for me in mini rifle, which is quite
but
nice.
but being more of a sort of speed shooter, that's been my drive,
Hmm.
in terms of the lightweight aspect, and why I've gone for the slammed to the
Oh, you're
receiver.
wondering why I went the other way?
Yeah, so I think we are like very very similar shooters, certainly when it comes to mini rifle.
Yeah.
We both tend to favor speed, and it's about, yeah, hit the target and move on as quickly as possible. Don't be alpha hunting or all of that. That's why I have a single powered red dot. You can't be alpha hunting with a single powered dot.
Oh, you'd be so happy to see what's on my rifle right now.
Well, I did see some messages today, so I'm sure I will catch up with where it's at. But for me, that's why the gun is as light as possible. In some sense, it's as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And with the optic and all of that. Okay, the Battle Arms is not a simple gun, but it's to maximize that strength, to make sure that I am getting. I know that I can shoot faster than a lot of people on the circuit. So I want to maximize that, and I
Yeah.
want to eke out as much as I can. So it's lightweight, it's simple. Whereas your build is like, it's not just heavier
I'm
than
trying
mine.
my best to get to Ben Ducker's weights ratios, but I don't lift, so I'm not getting it.
But it's like your gun is heavy, not
Yeah.
just heavier than my Battle Arms. It's a
It's double
heavy
your
gun.
Battle Arms' weight from the last time we spoke. Well, it was
It's
double. I think it's now like a third more based on what I've done to it.
but also you went for the whole red dot with a magnifier, which again there's more going on there. Like, to me, having that the flip magnifier is more complex than using 1 to 10 with a red dot, because with a 1 to 10 with a red dot, if you want to use the 1 to 10, you bring the rifle up normally. If you want to use a red dot, you go 45 degrees. With that setup, you're thinking of chucking on a magnifier and taking it off, and where in the stage you're going to do that, and like your build just confuses me because it doesn't seem conducive to speed, and I
So
still don't understand where the benefits are.
here's an interesting fact. Even in Action Air, I used to experiment. And I
hmm
experimented a lot. I experimented with what I used, the equipment, etc. And I'm pretty much doing the same here. The reason I went for magnifier solutions like that is if I felt a match didn't require it, I just took it off before the match even started. When I did gun check, the magnifier wasn't there. So that was
hmm
a way of trimming weight that I knew I didn't need anymore. And that did technically make it lighter than putting an LPVO on and a side red dot. But one thing I realized over time was that, and I should really start with the weight thing, because obviously in Action Air, you're going for speed. Even in Action Air, I was looking for a heavier pistol. And the reason for that was I learned that if I went fast, I tend to overswing. I tend to over position myself and I couldn't correct as much. And I found that weight helped me with that in Action Air. I found the same in mini rifle. I would do things really quickly and I'd overestimate. I'd end up trailing across a target quicker. I also found that when I started, and this was circumstantial, it wasn't something I was looking for. When I do my double taps, they tend to be more consistently in a grouping as opposed to not when I'm using a heavier rifle. And that helped me want to shoot faster without worrying about the trail, which is going from target to target. Obviously, this is all my perspective in the matter of science. I'm still experimenting. One thing, as you saw, was I started to use a Unity tactical mount, which brought me an inch higher from the side of a bore, which causes all sorts of issues.
It does.
As long as you, if you don't train it, if you don't train it. And the magnifier was brought into that to deal with weight ratio. So having a flip to side magnifier changes the weight of your rifle. It's 300 grams to the left or to the right, and that can actually cause issues with your ability to move across an array of targets. I decided I can get rid of that by having a flip up down, but it required the extra height. I've tried that. It does and doesn't work. I find that having your head more upright with the extra inch does help. But now I'm looking at somewhere closer to where you've got yours. I'm using a 1.7 inch height on the Trijicon MRO, so that's why I was expecting you to get happy on it. I don't think the MRO is the best red dot. I know there are better red dots out there, but practically it can be, and that's why I'm using it.
Again, this is and I can see a lot of comments. People talking about land tax and spikes, and you've got the area. I've got the battle arms. There's still be people with the 1522, and there's this real like, I've got the best gun. This is the best gun. This is the best sight. And again, it's like,
it's not.
There's some shooters out there that it doesn't really matter what they pick up, right? It's what works for you. It's what gets the job done. And I'd say when you say, the MRO is not the best optic, not the best red dot out there, 100%. Like the battle arms is not the best gun out there. A Benelli M2 speed is not the best practical shotgun.
It's about context.
For context, yeah. Not in all situations, not for all things. There's better quality glass in terms of red dots than the Trijicon. There's better styled out there. There's red dots with better functionality and all of that. But it's
it's about what you like about it and how it functions for you. And that's
simplicity.
That's a question. Yeah, and that's a question I had for the Vortex, the UH1. It's like, why do you like the reticle? It's busy, and I agree, it is busy. But I trained through the busyness to be able to shoot the way I can. Why do you like the triangle at the bottom? Well, because even with the height of a bore, I can use that as a reference to shoot closer. But people who don't think about what works for them tend to look at more the technical side, and that's what you were saying with the clearer glass, etc. You're right, it's about practicality, and that's why I'm trying the Trijicon MRO, not because I just bought it and haven't really used it, but because I want to see what it can do for me and work on it. And I think that's something that people miss. They watch reviews about stuff. It's like, you can look at the Firearms blog, and they will say Trijicon MRO is the worst optic ever made. And the reason they do is because they compare it with night vision, they compare it with target shooting, they compare it with aim points, they compare it with everything. They compare it with the best of Trijicon, which is the ACOG and the RMR2. That's not the point. You're looking at what you like, what works with you, and your familiarity with it. One thing I can say is the Trijicon MRO, I'm not going to have to change the battery anytime soon. The Vortex, I've changed almost every match because I've left it on at some point.
Well, don't bring up changing batteries in Vortex with Paul. That's for sure. The MRO, again, my thing is just simplicity. Like I'm at the root of it, I'm a very simple person.
Just stick an Apple logo on that Trijicon and it's going to look the same to you.
I don't like to think, right? The recall match that just up in Scotland. My best performance in a practical shotgun match, and it flowed. There were a lot of stages where there was so much going on, but I wasn't thinking about it.
Hmm.
It was happening, and it's those stages that you tend to do really, really well on, where you just sort of go on autopilot. And you should never really go on autopilot, because what I've found is, if I'm consciously pushing myself in my head, go faster, go faster, go faster, get to that position quicker, like really mentally push yourself, you can chunk huge amounts of times off. But aside from that, like, in my own head motivation, I wasn't thinking of like, oh, I'm going to need to load there, and then I'm loading. It's just like, I got to that spot and I found myself loading.
It's
You
an
know,
advanced level that you reach in practical shooting where certain elements feel like breathing.
yeah,
Reloads feel like breathing. You do your stage plan to a point where you're so comfortable it's like breathing.
yeah,
And that's an element you work to. Some people stick to that element. I used to stick to that element. I go, okay, now it feels like breathing. I'm just going to go through the motions. I don't realize that I'm going at the speed I'm used to, and that speed can be fast, but I don't realize I'm not pushing, I'm not driving. One thing that Paul and Matt shooting Action Air,
hmm,
one thing they drilled into me is like, attack it. I was like, attack
yeah,
it? What do you mean? It's like, attack the stage. You can shoot it fast, but you need to attack it. You need to, on your draw, attack the target. And I was like, oh, that's a bit of an aggressive way of doing it. We're shooting practical, we're not playing airsoft. But I understood what they meant by that. It's get out of the comfort zone, the fluidness that you have, and try and push further,
yeah,
because you can do it. It's like doing your weights and doing your reps and being, okay, I've done my reps. Like, push a bit further, do more, do a few more reps, see how far you can get, because you can always get faster, you can always get stronger. And that's the element that took me a while to realize in
hmm,
practical, is that yes, you can get comfortable in second or third, but the reason you're not coming to first is because you're not driving it, you're not trying to better yourself, you're just dealing with the fluidity that you've adopted. And that's great, it makes you safe, but it also doesn't allow you
completely.
to bring the line up in regards to your performance.
Like, there's consistency. Consistency is a huge part of practical shooting. Like,
Yes.
you can't just win a match on one stage, right? And the issue, again, you can have this conversation for hours. It's like, people say that, well, you shouldn't push yourself too hard in a stage, because then you break yourself out of consistency. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to push yourself too hard. But
It's about
you're
how
never
much you push.
yeah, you're never going to find where that next level is without pushing. And I
Mm.
think that's where the balance comes into it, is like, you know, pushing right. You need to be on that limit the whole time, right? I've never understood the mentality of safe shooting. No, I will caveat that massively. Always be safe in your shooting. When we say safe shooting within a practical element,
It's the comfort zone.
it's not, yeah, it's not pushing yourself hard that you're going to fluff a load. You're not pushing yourself hard that you're going to miss a target and things like that, that you might run past a target, like I did at recoil. It's things like that's a safe approach in terms of your strategy and your stage plan. Is like, every target is going to be knocked down, and I'm not going to risk a mistake.
Mm.
But I think sometimes you have to risk a mistake, a technical mistake, to win.
It depends on the stage as well, because I find from the matches I've shot, especially in Action Air, there are technical stages that you know where your strengths lie, and there are places where you know where your weaknesses are. So you'll play it safe on the weaknesses, such as weak shoulder, for example, or weak hand shooting, but then you drive harder on your strong side, such as moving targets, bobbers, etc. Um, and it's about lasting the match as well. You don't
Hmm.
want to. I find it interesting because you've talked about how it takes you a while to ramp up into a match. It takes you a while to get to fifth gear, sixth, seventh. I don't know how many gears the Porsche has. I think seven is eight,
Six,
nine. You
six,
got six.
only six. Yeah,
Oh
I
my
know.
goodness, he's got seven. That feels
I,
weird. You've got better gear ratios though. It doesn't matter, and you've got a
the
nicer.
thing is, it's been reported that you can do 140 in fifth.
No, you're gonna try it in a different country, obviously. But yeah,
in Mexico.
In Mexico, you're gonna
No,
have
on a
to leave.
track. On a track. It's a
Yeah,
track
on a
car.
track.
Like,
Yeah, it's a track car. Mine's not a track car.
on the Goodwood
Mine's,
Straight, 140 and 5th.
yeah, mine's just a luxurious Need for Speed underground kind of car. Anyway, where were we?
What's
What were we talking about?
Blackstone saying about the match gear and the practice gear. Again, I understand that you want to make your mistakes in practice. 100%. You always push yourself more in practice because you're not going to get the DQ, right? You're not gonna. You can find out what works, but I do feel there's a lot of people that the match gear and the practice gear is too great. Like there's a too big a difference.
I've
Right?
seen. Sorry, I'm cutting you up. I've seen in Action Air people use all sorts of gear. I have used the cheapest of gear. I've used the most expensive of gear. I've found that sometimes expensive doesn't equal performance or functionality. Sometimes it's more bling than it's worth.
No. When we say gear, we're not talking about. We're talking about gears.
Oh, gears. Sorry. I didn't realize we were talking about that kind of gears.
No.
I thought we were
Unless Blackstone is talking about equipment. What Blackstone is saying is that there's a match gear which is going to be in a lower gear than the practice gear.
I see. Yeah, he's right. Yeah. It's. But I guess I talk about it in percentages. You're at 80%, or no, actually, in practice, I tend to go to the 95%. 100% is dangerous in the way I do my percentages. 100% is I'm being reckless to try and get through.
It's all relative. I would never. I would never do. For me, 100%. When I say that I'm pushing 100%, right? That's with 100% being a good 5-10% away from anything dangerous happening, because there is that inherent that ceiling, that immovable ceiling, that you are not going to try that, and there's some things where you see really experienced shooters pull it off, and you look at it and you go, I will shoot myself in the foot if I try that. Like, that's not happening. I am not at that level. My 100% is not near enough for me to try that. But yeah, so I practice 100%, 100% of being safe, right? But my match will be like 95, 98.
Same. Yeah, it'd be slightly dimmer.
Whereas where I've heard people say, oh, my match will be 90 or 80%, and I'm like, you're losing an easy 15% there. Right?
As you said, it's familiarity, and it's depending on the person. Their 85% could be your 95%. They just have a different margin in regards to how they see it.
I mean, relatively, people's percentage gains being different. Like relative. There's people that deliberately will step it back even further than what they need to.
It's comfort of using manual of arms. It's confidence in your abilities, and if you don't have the confidence, obviously you're going to be more reserved in your abilities. I can be like that, but I also look for the consistency. I know that taking the risk can ruin consistency, and I have not won matches. Actually, no, I have won a match on consistency, but I've seen people lose stages but win matches because they've been consistent throughout.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I look at. Yes, you should try and win a stage. You should try your best to get the maximum amount of points, because that could be the difference between second and first. But don't forget, you've got the rest of the match to deal with. And that's something I find interesting, is that people go, oh, I screwed up that stage. And it's only a 40-point stage, which is 2% of the match. And they decide to bring themselves down for the rest of the match when they realize, actually, you could still win the match.
There's an interesting, I can find arguments for both, like, large, medium, and small stages, right? I think I share this with Connors. Like, Connors looks at a lot of the small stages and always say they're survival stages. That's like, just get through it stages, right? Don't when you've got 4 targets in front of you and it's like an option 3 start from a table, right? The fastest time of the day is going to be something like 3-4 seconds, right? What you don't want to do is do something where you end up losing 3 or 4 seconds, because then that's disastrous. So I tend to find the I aim for more consistency with the shorter stages because there's less to gain, right? Because if everybody's around the 4 or 5 second mark on a stage, even if you do it blisteringly fast, what
There's
are you
only
going to
so many
make up?
points you can have.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Whereas where the ones that I will really push, the ones that I will obsess over and will like hype myself up over are the big long stages, because to me that you end up pulling out 10 or 20% on a long stage. The points haul is huge, right?
What's interesting is I don't normally look at my match statistics, etc., but I noticed when comparing myself to people who are above me in the leaderboard for Youthly, for example, the long stages I did really well. I was in the top 4, 5, 10. I would have to remember to not get moaned at for saying things wrong. But in the short stages, I did terribly. I was 15th, 20th, 26th. Now, coming ninth in that, was I? Yeah, I think ninth. Coming ninth in Youthly was a lot to do with me not really pushing hard enough in the short stages. I was waiting for the long stages to put my 100% in. And I think this has happened before where I'm waiting for those long stages. I'm trying to make sure I put my maximum effort in those because I know there's more points to be held. It's not about gaining points, it's about maintaining and retaining the points.
Yeah, it's a different fight. Like with, I guess looking at it, the shorter stages, you're just fighting to keep
fighting
those
for the small
points.
points. Yeah.
Where with the longer stages, you're fighting to take them. But that's how I look at it. Like I'm trying to make sure that I stay as close to the 100% on the short stages, whereas on the long stages, I want to open up the gap. Right. That's probably how I attack it. I really like, in terms of the different practice and match gear, Blackstone's comments. In practice, I shoot to where I want to be. In match, I shoot to where I am. That's a pretty safe, well, not necessarily just
it's
safe.
a great
That's a good
analogy.
mantra.
Yeah, it's a great analogy
Yeah.
to how you want your mindset to be. Practice is about bettering yourself. Match is about showing your best. And I think he's right. It's a perfect way to see it as someone who wants to better themselves in practical and any sport, really.
So I was laughing at John Smith, a higher up comment. Nothing will ever give me more secondhand embarrassment than seeing an airsofter throw a fit over not being referred to by his imaginary rank. Not something I've witnessed, but something I can definitely imagine. But the comment I was going back up to was again Blackstones. Are both of you going to the EHC? Perhaps Harry, and you could answer that one.
I hope you still are. I am.
Yeah.
Paul's currently in Poland showing off, and I hope he does really well because we're going to be looking up to him even in the EHC, and I think it'll be awesome because it's going to be 4 of us in a squad. It's going to be you, me, Paul, and Clifton, right?
Yep.
And we're all going to be shooting completely the same handgun, really. And it's honestly, I think it's going to be a mix of being with friends, doing something we love, trying to better ourselves, being competitive with each other. It'll be the first time I've ever shot alongside Richard as well as you in a way, especially in such an official match because it is a very high level match. It's a level 4.
So for people not understand, like we showed the clip earlier. So the EHC is the European Handgun Championships, which is held every 3
It's
years?
held whenever they want to hold it.
Well,
to be honest with you,
it's a level 4 continental handgun match. So the last one that I was able to go to was the Pan American Handgun Championships, which was out in Frostproof, Florida, which I went out with Paul. And as you say, my squad, I was squadded with Paul and Richard Clifton, who has a wealth of handgun knowledge. Like what he was a great sort of mentor. I'd never been to I'd never competed in a sanctioned full bore handgun match.
wow.
I'd done level 1s,
yeah.
but I'd never done level 2s, level 3s because NHTSA, the level 2 and level 3s had been cancelled, and I hadn't been previously abroad. I'm just trying to double check that is correct.
You've definitely shot 2-gun, 3-gun stuff.
Oh yeah,
handgun.
yeah.
So
Big,
it wasn't
bigger
like
matches.
your first time shooting practical handgun.
No, no, but it was my first ever level 4, and I think first sanctioned handgun match. There was a lot, a lot to get
It
up to
was,
speed with, and
yeah, it was your highest IPSC match so far.
yeah, and potentially is going to be the highest one for a little while. But yeah, so I enjoyed that experience so much, mainly because we ended up spending a week out in Florida, and what's not to like about spending a week out in Florida. So yeah, so you, myself, Paul, and other Team GB members are going out to Greece for a level 4 handgun match. That's I guess it's going to be like another 24 stage, 3 or 4 day match. They're big matches, and it's interesting. Again, you saying about something that I came away from the last well, from the Pan Ams, the get up and go from the first stage, and I think so. It was the Welsh match, I think, immediately after the Pan American Handgun Championships, and the Welsh is well, at that point had been my best result within a sanctioned match, and it's because I understood that you can't, in any match, you can't let that first couple of stages go. You have to hit the ground at 100%, all out. You can't have any warm up, and that's accentuated when you have a 4-day match and you're only doing, it's a 24 stage match over 4 days. You've got 6 stages a day, right? If the first stage you're at 50-60%, like, you think about throughout the competition what you're throwing away. So I learned that very quickly. I'd never been to a competition, an IPSC competition that was shot over multiple days. So that was a big sort of wake up call. So that's something that's very different at these big competitions, is that in some ways it's easier because you're only doing 6 stages a day, but I think in a way it's mentally harder.
I think it will be mentally harder. From my experience shooting in Hong Kong for the level 5, so far the only Action Air World shoot. Hopefully there'll be more. It was 10 stages a day, and
Right.
it was 30 stages. So we basically did a lot. But where are you coming from with dealing with 6 stages? The first stage of every single day is the hardest. And it's because it's like trying to learn to ride a bicycle again to a certain extent. You just got out of bed, you've had your breakfast and everything else. You haven't really shot yet for that day. And that does make you a little bit apprehensive to your abilities. Even if you've shot for years, there is even a small percentage that makes you go, oh, first stage of the day, let's not screw it up. And it happens. I kind of got screwed over on my 3rd day for the last 10 stages because one of the stages the previous day I had to reshoot against my will. And the reason for that was a steel didn't fall. And they decided to calibrate it when actually it was range equipment failure. They went through the whole thing, and it got to a point where I couldn't shoot the stage anymore that day because we'd spend 20 whole minutes deliberating the rules, going through what needed to be done when it was quite obvious what needed to be done. So I didn't have time to shoot the stage. And what they forced me to do is, on the 3rd day, half an hour to an hour before I shot what was supposed to be my first stage for the day, I reshot the other stage. And it did one of 2 things. It did technically help me warm up for the last 10 stages, but it also ruined that reshoot for me. Even though I'd shot that stage before, it felt like I was shooting that stage for the first time again, with the caveats of it's earlier than normal. It's my first stage of the day, when it was actually, I think, my 6th stage of the previous day. And it just ruined me. That was my worst stage, funny enough.
Well, we saw not different examples. We saw that out in the Pan Ams. There was basically a mini hurricane rolled in.
Yes, I saw that
one evening. Fortunately, we were on the morning shoot that day, so it was the other poor sods that got caught in it. And they ended up having to stop shooting. And I think there were some squads where 2 or 3 stages they weren't able to complete, which meant that they were on the morning squad the next day, so they had to turn up like 2 or 3 hours earlier than what they were meant to. The range is still flooded. you know, the aftermath of the hurricanes there, and then they had to go, you know, they had to do those 3 stages that should have already been shot, and then go into another 6 stages. So, you know, the toll on you as a competitor doing that is you know pretty.
It's
Yeah, it can be pretty big.
Yeah, it's like getting the W put on your lap when you're racing with cars. It's like, oh, you got a wet lap. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I didn't just get a wet lap. The bloody stage was different.
Yeah.
It's like there were barricades not where they
you,
were before. There were paper targets that were like this.
did you see Heng's video put out today?
Where he
I
slipped
won't.
on a
I'm not going to put it up because you know he put it on his personal Facebook. And
but yes, I saw the unfortunate event of
yes,
his needing to get footing, and honestly,
that was
anyone would have fell from that.
That was a wet lap. Yeah,
that was more than a wet lap. That was an ice lap.
Yeah,
that was a we almost cut the you know, we almost decided to delay the race kind of lap.
I mean, fair play. Yeah, one of so he ended up winning Open Division still. And the thing is, so I took the stage win in standard for that, right? And he
was
was
still
sorry,
you didn't have a wet lap though, did you?
It was still quite a moist lap. If you've seen the, I'll bring up the.
Oh, you can bring up that one. Cool. Well, whilst you talk, yeah. No, I've experienced. What was it? It was.
I've got a very funny run on this.
So I experienced that in Utah because you could have flash storms in Utah, and on the day of the, I think it was for a few hours on the day of the Empire Strikes Back match that they had, there were 2 or 3 stages that were completely flooded, and it was my turn to shoot. And I was like, this is going to be more of a get my feet out of the mud kind of situation than run and gun. And I still shot that really well, but it made me realize that sometimes it just doesn't work in your favor, and you just have to shoot the match as is.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things people get into the mindset, and they're like, "Oh, it's raining, I can't be arsed," and you're like, "But there's so many people you can now beat with that mentality." Like you can see, right? You can see how damp and slippery it still is. So we shot after Heng, and you can see I'm going little steps. Is that audio coming through?
Yeah, the audio is coming through.
Facebook will ban the channel. You can see it's like it's a swamp. It's an absolute swamp. So he actually Heng. You can see how hesitantly I take it around the tire. So Heng ended up. Let's go right to the beginning.
So he slipped there, didn't he?
It's here. I think he actually caught
the charge line.
That charge line. But fair play to him. He was going full chat. And he kept hold of the gun.
He was in a coat as well. He was well prepared for that slip.
Yeah. he just, and the thing is, he got up and still went to town on it. So coming on as a guest, of course, this is English Shooting, so you can't get away without being a little bit political. So obviously you've been following what's going on. What is your predictions with everything that's going on with the consultation, the rise in revocations and all that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it could go one of 3 ways, and I was preparing for this in some way or another. So it could either go in our advantage, and certain changes are made that allow us to get more into the sport and allow our licensing to be a bit more fluid. And that's what we're all hopeful for. It could go one way where nothing really happens, but maybe 6 months to a year afterwards, they try something else to make some kind of change, either for our benefit or not. And there's the third one, which I don't think I really want to think about, because it could be they completely ignore a lot of the consultation advice that comes through. They decide to do what they were planning to, whatever that is, and everything gets more restrictive to the point where even if it's restricted in such a way that makes it harder for grants to come through, etc. I feel like
if they're planning something, what do you think they're planning?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because I don't want to think what they're planning, because it might come true. It's all the Murphy's Law things. If you think it will happen, it might. It's more likely to. And if enough of us think about it,
then it's in terms of like the best. I was going to say that the best form of defense is attack. But if you speculate on what they might be planning, if you speculate on, Yeah, you can react. You can plan
Yes.
for it. It's easier. So yeah, you don't want it. You don't want it to be self-fulfilling. You don't want to, think it into existence as such. But you also don't want to be naive to what might be coming. Just a quick one, Nitsa, thank you very much for the support. I do all my shooting at my club. How do you get more involved in the shooting and traveling like you guys?
Go as friends.
Goes turn it into your career and make it a company expense. That's 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 part of it. Like, be contractually obliged to turn up to matches. I think it is developing, to keep it, it's developing a big enough passion for the sport where you don't care if it's going to cost a few £100 to go to a match. You don't care that it's going to be 2 or 3 days away. You're that passionate. Find the area of shooting sports that you are that passionate about, that you don't care about money or time anymore. Like, and for me, that was practical shooting.
I think
I don't know what.
I'll take everything you've said. I agree with all of that. I think one thing that might be missing is involving yourself in the global community and finding places you want to be. And I think this is, do as I say, as not as I do, because I'm not doing this and I want to, is contact match directors that you want to go to matches to. Find out more about things you want to do from people who have done it and try to get the advice from them, and use that to become part of the community there. Because, for example, for us in the UK, it's very difficult for us to go shoot handgun matches overseas. But doesn't mean it's impossible, because there are people in the global community who want us to shoot their matches. They want us to be a part of that community because it helps the community out. Being involved in a match helps the match, and that helps the next match and the next after. Mini rifle is a good example, because we can do that at home. We can take our rifles overseas. People have gone to Norway, people have gone to other countries, and it's a mix of just contacting the match director and finding out more about it, but also getting to know the community there as well to help facilitate your ability to go there. You could find lodging with friends. You could find all sorts. It's,
I think, like, putting it in short is it's not, don't be scared to reach out for help.
exactly. Yeah.
There's so many people. Like, I could not count, not just for practical shooting, but I could not count the amount of offers that I've had from people all over the world, to say, like, come out and, you come out here and I'll put a gun in your hands.
In a good way.
In a good way, right? And IPSC, so in terms of it's involved in the shooting and the traveling like you guys, it depends specifically what you're saying shooting. Like, we sort of go down to practical shooting, because that's what we tend to do. But it's like, if you just want to go and shoot, there's the sort of, I would say, the easier option, which is like going for American shooting trips or shooting travel club. There's a package, you pay a price, you know what you're going to go out there and get. You're not going to have to think about it. It's all going to be catered for you. And, that is how I started going abroad. It's probably a very good, very, very good first way to go abroad, because you are in, it might be a country that you've been to before. The first time I shot abroad would have been America. Now, I'd been to America a number of times previously. I'd never been shooting out there, right? So there's still that new element to it. Like, what are the actual laws? What can I do? How am I going to get hold of a gun? What range should I go to? Well, going with somewhere like American Shooting Trips or Shooting Travel Club, that's all taken care of. You book your hotel. Well, they can even book your hotel and your flights. But it's basically, be here at this day, and there will be a world-class range and an abundance of guns for you guys to use. Where what we've sort of morphed more into is the competitive shooting. But I think you need the experience first and foremost. You have to walk before you can run. So go out to American shooting, go out on these commercial trips first. That's going to give you experience in terms of going abroad and shooting. But in terms of competition shooting, it starts at home. You need to get competition, or it starts at home. And when I say home, like, you have your local club. Well, it took me, God no, it took me years before I shot anywhere other than north of Bisley, right? But you get into practical shooting here, and you start doing it at a higher level within the UK. It's like you start traveling up to Wales or across to Wales. You start traveling up to Scotland regularly. You travel up to Grimsby regularly. Dartford isn't exactly too far away from me, but you travel there. Up to the Midlands quite a lot for Yevley. So you get used to traveling. Yes, it's not traveling abroad, but you get used to the routine of booking into a hotel with all your gear, making sure that you're match fresh the next day. So it's baby steps. You start at your local club, you work out, and then there's more introductory ways, in terms of shooting abroad. But moving back on, what do you think they're planning? Come on, I want some.
I'm going to think
politics.
the positive side. I think they want to redo licensing, and I think they want to take baby steps. I think instead of completely scrapping what's available and rebuilding it, which I think is the most difficult thing and the most radical thing to do, I think they want to start changing elements that they think will be easier to ease into and transition to. Whether that's
do you think for the best or for the worst of shooting? Do you think there
I
is
think
this,
I think
like
it
this?
could. So it depends which perspective you're taking. I think that for the sake of, if I was on the other side, if I was on the firearms licensing side, what is the biggest crux for me? And I think it's the lack of centralization. And I'm hoping that's what they're thinking too, that they want to centralize everything. They want to make the process a bit more concrete to the point that you can quite easily have what the not bylaw, but what the advice should be for every single constabulary, for every single grant. So everything is processed to the degree that is expected of every constabulary, because then you don't have the issue of, oh, Devon and Cornwall's done something, Hampshire's done something, Thames Valley's done something, Scotland's done something. Okay, Scotland's a different ratio because it's technically a different country, but
it's already centralized.
It's already centralized, and that's probably a great example of what could be.
So are you being like optimistic that they want that? You think that
I
firearms
think they
licenses
do,
want that centralization?
because as a software engineer, if you centralize everything, costs go down because you can have the same process.
Okay, so when you say firearms licensing, do you mean like the firearm inquiry officers? Do you mean firearms licensing
the whole
management?
system?
Because I would say like your firearm inquiry officer, right? They don't care about efficiency,
Of course not.
right?
Well,
They
that's a generalization. I'm sure some do and some don't.
yeah, okay. Their pay is not, a firearm inquiry officer is not paid any more or any less if they do one application a day or they do 10.
They're
Right?
not paid on commission.
Well, yeah, I imagine if they were, it makes no difference to them whether the system is more efficient if it's more centralized. I think as soon as you start getting up into higher management, I think you might be right in terms of a firearms licensing manager or even a chief of police.
But I think that's where the big decisions might come. That's the thing.
So you think that it will come so you're saying that you think overall it will be positive, and you think that actually it's going to be the chief of police that are going to be pushing towards that?
I think so, because if you think about how they deal with their day-to-days, in the end, it's about looking at the costs and what funding they get. And if there's a problem with something, it's probably due to funding and costs, and they want to mitigate that. They can't just shut something off entirely, because as you've seen in the news, when you do that, things go wrong. So they're probably looking for a more efficient way of doing both, cutting costs, but also making things more efficient to the point that these things can be avoided. So that's the positive side of me. I'm thinking that's what they want to do. I'm neglecting the idea that someone has an agenda to get rid of firearms in the UK, which I'm sure there are many. I'm neglecting the fact that there are hidden agendas. I'm just thinking of it logically as a system. If you want to improve upon it, you want to centralize it when it's not centralized, and you want to make it more efficient so the costs are less. Because, see it this way, if every constabulary did it their way, the cost would be high because they're all doing different things. It's like trying to reinvent the wheel for each constabulary. But if the wheel was standardized for everyone, you can't spend money to reinvent it. You can't go, I'm going to put spikes on my wheels because I'm expecting rough terrain. Oh, I'm going to put slicks
my
on
wheels. The wheels are very, very spiky. That's for sure.
There's a problem there if your Porsche spikes.
What do you think as a community we could be doing to best protect ourselves?
Oh, we need to centralize. Funny enough, it's interesting
So
to say that.
Centralized organization.
I think, and we already do this to an extent, but I feel like the associations and the national governing bodies are doing what they can, and sometimes they're in conflict. This year, I think, is one of the best years that I've observed that national governing bodies and associations are doing things that they're going on the same stream of the river. They're not going the other way, which is great. But I know that that's not going to be enough. The community needs to do the same. And we, much like the airsoft community, are quite segmented. With airsoft, you've got mill simmers, speed softers, people who just skirmish on the weekend, people who go traveling around internationally, nationally. They're all quite different to each other, and they all have their different ways of doing things. It's the same with the shooting community. In fact, it's even more because we have clay pigeon shooters, practical shooters, target shooters, 50 cal clubs, all sorts, Section 7s, machine gun clubs. We're all quite separated in our interests, but we're not as unionized in the fact that we try to support each other and go in the same direction. And I think if I was to be wanting to disrupt this potential, I would put out, consultation forms and stuff like that to see how divided the community can be, and then nitpick on what is different and what is not the same across the community. And that's what I'd target if I was to be malicious in some way.
Well, that just gives more sort of more impetus to sign the various consultations. Actually, I think I can add to that. Again, that's a really good point. Using it as a sort of litmus test to see, well, actually, how fractured are they? How easy is it going to be to shove wedges in between them? But also, it could be a litmus test just for how engaged the community is. If they put out this consultation that what Basque is hailing as the most important, the biggest consultation in 35 years, and then the Home Office sees 2,000 people respond, that's just a green light to the Home Office to go, they're not interested.
It goes both ways. I think ideally, if the entire shooting community responded with pretty much the same kind of responses with some variation based on the individual factor, which I think is important. I don't think everyone should be robotic and like a drone respond with exactly the same thing Basque requests people to do. I think it should have some individuality because it shows that it's not robotic. It shows people who review these consultation forms to go, oh, wait a minute, this person definitely seems like a practical shooter. He has a lot of interest in that. This person looks like a target shooter. This person seems like they do waterfowling, and this person does clay pigeon. But having the same kind of responses all together shows there is strength here. We shouldn't counteract the strength here because we know there'll be uproar. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sure we put the strengths where they lie, but then also add a little bit of, not spice, but icing, where we are recommending extra stuff. What if we could do this? What if we did that?
That's it. Using the opportunity, if they're going to open it up for change and open it up for conversation, then use that opportunity not just to talk about the changes that they want,
about what could be better,
what we want. Just want to just touch on MJM's comment. Are we suggesting that revocation of these licenses are not justified? I'm not buying it. Yes, they want less people owning FAC, but if you don't give them a reason to take them away, what's the issue? And this harps back on to what I was saying earlier on this channel. Obviously, the main headline is about this increase in revocations. We've seen about a 10% increase in revocations, when actually we've seen like a 5 or 10% decrease in numbers of certificate holders. So, you know, it's not just there's more certificate holders to take away licenses from, it's the amount of revocations going on are increasing. And I said earlier on in this, you know, about the plead for people to go and have insurances, and it's this attitude. If you don't give them a reason to take them away, what's the issue? Like, I hope, and MJM, you never come to eat those words, because you don't have to do anything for them to come and take them, right? There are people that are, you know, within Devon and Cornwall that are sat there still without their guns, that still don't know why armed police turned up at 2 o'clock in the morning to take them away. Anybody at any point can make an allegation against you to have your certificates removed, right? You don't need to do anything, right? You just simply need to exist. So it's not, you know, am I saying that the revocations, you know, the 400 odd revocations that we're talking about, am I saying that they weren't justified? I don't know. What we've seen is an increase in seizures, an increase in requests for voluntarily surrendering firearms. We're now seeing an increase in revocation. All at the same time, we're seeing a decrease in the amount of people entering the sport, a decrease in the amount of people holding certificates, applying for certificates. So to sit there and say, oh, you know, this, you know, I'm not buying it, this seems all genuine, I think is very, very naive. I think there, my assumption would be within those revocations, there's going to be an unfortunate amount of people that found themselves wrong place, wrong time, that found themselves sort of nothing, you know, they didn't do anything, right? And yet they found themselves without their guns, without their property. Stephen, anyone can make an allegation against you and then you are left to fight it. And unfortunately, this is one of the negatives of being a firearms owner here in the UK, is that, you know, it's not the same legal system if you're a firearms owner, right? You don't, the same bar of the same burden of proof is not applied as within our criminal justice system. You are assumed guilty until proven innocent. That is how it works. If somebody makes an allegation, that allegation will be taken seriously, you know, and it will be taken as truth until it has been proved otherwise for you to get your certificates back. So this attitude of, oh, if you don't do anything, like that's you know, like that's just see how it works out long term. Yes, indeed, Mum.
I read that too. I was like, yeah.
But that's it. Somebody, you know, you have a neighbor, right? It tends to be disgruntled ex-wives and neighbors. That's the two stories I hear time and time again. And I've heard silly stories like, I put my bin 10 centimeters over to you know, my neighbor's side, and then they phoned the police and called, you know, and said this, you know, said that I made threats. You know, I parked my car too close to their usual parking spot, so an argument ensued. Like, it doesn't even have to be your neighbors. You get into a discussion with, or a discussion, you get into a you know, an argument or a discussion that isn't, it's not violent, it's not, you know, it's just a disagreement with somebody, and a bystander phones the police, right? You could be watching a film too loudly and people think there's something going on in the house and the police are called, right? You could be squatted, you know, for those of you that don't know what
swatted, not
is.
squatted.
Swatted.
Swatted.
I always thought it was squatting, but swatted. You know, a million different things can happen that are completely out of your control. You know, it's to have that attitude of, you know, or you just don't do anything. If only it was that simple. And unfortunately, you know, I've become a bit of a hotline for people that have had their certificates revoked. You know, and I say to people, you know, I've been in the situation, and it's lonely. You don't know where to turn to. You don't know who to speak to. So I'm always like to. I'd rather not would have to, in terms of I'd rather other people weren't put in that situation. But yeah, it's the majority of people that I speak to, they're like, I don't know how I ended up in this situation. Right? There's been some of the nicest people out there, and some people that aren't so nice, that have ended up in the situation through no fault of their own, and it is usually down to allegations. Um, I've heard, yeah, there's been people where, oh, I got into a bar fight one night. It's like, well, yeah, okay, well, you can't handle your drink, so that is sort of on you. Or, I ended up getting 12 points because I speed everywhere. Like, it's like there are things where you have less sympathy, but the majority of the time it's through no fault of your own. So yeah, that's I hate that attitude. So you can have it if you want, and I hope you never have to eat your words on that one. But yeah, I think I've got a couple of more bits that I'm gonna cover on the stream, but I'll probably leave you to get off to bed or to chill, Arian.
No worries. Yeah, it's a
So
pleasure to be here.
thanks for joining. If you guys want to follow more of what Arian gets up to, then check out Mochaccino on YouTube and on Facebook. There's a little link on the Facebook post today, or if you search Mochaccino on YouTube or Facebook, you normally pop up. It's everything from reviews, gear reviews, traveling, match breakdowns, and everything else in between. And as a reminder, the face behind the editing for the channel at the moment. So yes, you can the sudden jump in quality in videos you can put down to Arian. So yeah, I will bid you good night, Arian, and I'll catch you later. Thanks,
Yeah, you
thanks
too.
for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Right, catch you later.
See you later.
So let me know, guys, if you'd like to see more visitors, if you'd like to see Arian back as well, if there's anything else that you want to chat to him about. I'm always looking for new things, and it's always a lot easier having another person, because I can actually take a break from talking and get something to drink in the meantimes. But yeah, a couple of other points that I just wanted to cross off before we leave tonight. And just as a reminder, there is a like button. You should hit it. And there's also a subscribe button. So you don't know where this would lead. You don't need to we don't know who we could have on the channel in a future date, so make sure you don't miss it by hitting that subscribe button. So some big news, some positive news. We've been talking a lot about highly competitive shooters out there, and there isn't anybody more successful than Mr. George Digweed. He is, I believe, the most successful sports person in any sporting discipline ever. He has just taken, let's I'll bring up the video for you guys to have a look at. Where's it gone? Where did you go? Here we go. It's another field sports. So he's now got 32 world titles, and I believe this was at the 45th FITASC World Championship. So George Digweed, he's not a one-trick pony. He does a lot of different World FITASC sporting championships. It's not just in the one sort of clay discipline that he does. It's a variety, but 32 world championships, and I think they span over 5 decades. So he is the only he's a sports person to have world championships. No, we don't want to talk about that. Let's get rid of that. It's insane. Like, this guy should be like on the cover of every sporting magazine, regardless of just shooting. So I think they said that he started shooting at the age of 10, and he is the first sportsman to win world titles in 5 different decades, when he won the Sporting World Championship. His latest win brings his world titles to 32 world titles, 4 European compact titles, and 12 World Cups. He has dominated the world of sporting and fit-esque shooting across 5 decades. He's also a keen pheasant, pigeon, and fox shooter. He holds George Digweed also holds world records for like the longest shots. There's I think it was at Bisley. There's some videos on YouTube, some absolutely incredible shots that he was taken. So yeah, big congratulations to George Digweed. And it does annoy me, I've made videos on this before, that he doesn't have more wider national like recognition. You know, like I'm a massive F1 fan, I'm a massive Lewis Hamilton fan, and I think Hamilton gets deservedly the publicity that he gets. You know, 7-time 8 world championships, right? He deserves those accolades. He is on most metrics. Well, I think on every one apart from the one that he's tied on, the greatest F1 driver to have ever lived, right? By the figures. But you then have people like George Digweed that have 32 world titles. That starts to make the 7 world championships that Lewis Hamilton have look very, very small. Has he ever made BBC Sports Personality of the Year? BBC, I'll have a quick Google. Sports Personality. Yeah, I think there have been shooters on there. George Digweed. George Digweed for Sports Personality of the Year. I think there's a lot of people that have petitioned for him to be Sports Personality of the Year. The Olympic success of the past decades, more people are aware of clay shooting and valued respectable sport, and we wish to support this further by helping to nominate George for the Sports Personality of the Year. I don't think he actually has, though. Yeah, I don't think he actually lots of people pushing for him to. He should. Like, you know, well, but what actually is the sports? Is it about the personality of the person? Like, I don't know. I've never met George Digweed. Does he have a good personality? It's just, yeah, the fact that he doesn't have the recognition. It just annoys me. You know, he is the most successful sports person ever to have ever existed. Nobody has ever claimed that many wins. Moving on to the last point of this evening, and this is something that we've visited previously, and equally annoys me that this is still going on. The discrimination, again, there seems to be a lot of things closing in around shooters, making things more and more difficult, and you know, nothing makes lives more difficult than affecting your revenue, affecting your income, and affecting your business. Now, this is something that I've experienced, not to necessarily this extent, but along the lines of firsthand. You know, when Magload got its first online e-commerce store, it was we were using PayPal, we were using Stripe. PayPal very quick, well, and we were using Squarespace. So first of all, PayPal binned our account. Now, fortunately, we saw the writing on the wall. Other people had fallen foul with, you know, because PayPal doesn't just remove your account, right? It freezes it, and it will freeze it with whatever money you have in there. And there were points where we could have thousands and thousands of pounds in the PayPal account, and we had heard of horror stories. I won't name them, but people, dealers of ours, right? People that we have a close, personal and sort of business relationship with. I think one of them had about £6,000 frozen in their PayPal account. I think another one had a £3,000 or £4,000 frozen, and we were aware of this. So we got into the routine where it's like, to begin with, we had like a £500 limit. We were taking, if it got more than 500 quid, we'd instantly take it out. And then we got more and more paranoid. I think we dropped it. We were basically, I was doing multiple transfers a day. Like any time there was money in PayPal, I would take it out. And they ended up freezing our account with like £96 in it. Right, it took about 2.5 years for them to unfreeze it. Now, 96 quid. I'm not here with my violin. Like, that was just like, okay, that's just annoying and petty. But imagine if that had been £3,000. Imagine that had been £6,000. That could have been the difference of paying wages. That could be the difference of paying a supplier. That could really have an impact on certainly a smaller growing business. And then we lost our Stripe account, because we're selling firearms, even though we don't sell firearms. We don't sell firearms online. And then our Squarespace got, pulled, and we had like a week. We had to build a new website in a week, and that was our main source of revenue. And then, fortunately, something that we have been very, very lucky with, touch wood, is that our bank, we bank with Barclays, right? And they have been incredible. Like, we've had they do this weird, annoying, like, and you've got to like do this annual update of your details, and they tend to make that 10 times harder than it actually needs to. But they, we went in store to open up the business bank accounts. So we have one with Magload. I've got one for my other business, and we laid it out on the table. This is what we do, but it's licensed. It's all above board. We're well vetted. And to be honest, we're not really, we're more about the accessories than the guns themselves. And they, the store manager, the branch manager was like actually quite genuinely interested, understood that it was all above board, understood that it was about sport, and had no problem at all. And pretty much green lighted our application, green lighted our account from day one. And, touch wood, we have never had any whisperings or murmurs of Barclays wanting to close our account. And, we don't hide it from them what we do. But there are a number of people, obviously, that aren't with, so it could even be Barclays, but some banks, obviously, that aren't, or account managers that aren't as friendly. Discrimination against shooting businesses by banks highlighted by BASC. The disproportionate treatment of shooting businesses and the gun trade should feature in any review into banking account closures, BASC has told Economic Secretary to the Treasury. In a letter to Andrew Griffiths MP, BASC has highlighted that shooting businesses, clubs and syndicates have been suffering the consequences of disproportionate risk adverse decision making for many years, with sudden unexplained account closures and new account applications refused. The letter was written after the minister wrote to the Financial Conduct Authority, claiming banks were disproportionately treating individuals who are classed as politically exposed person, meaning those who would be more likely to be exposed to bribery and corruption by virtue of their position and influence. In the letter, BASC has told the minister that the suffering of shooting businesses and gun trade was a sector-wide issue. The letter included a BASC report on the topic completed last year that supported the minister's opinion that some financial institutions may be failing to strike the right balance of taking a proportionate approach based on a careful evaluation of risk. Now, obviously, this has become quite a hot topic at the moment with the likes of Nigel Farage, and it's going to. And I think actually what's going on with him at the moment is probably going to help fix this. I think I messaged my dad earlier and said, look, if Farage is going to be as effective as sort of cleaning up the banks as he has in getting us out of the EU, then this can only be a good thing for us as shooting organizations. Like, I'm sorry. Yes, we live in a free society. We live in a capitalist society, and it is a dangerous game to force people to do business with people, right? Being able to, anybody who runs a shop will know, you have the right to refuse. You have the right to say, I am not serving this person. You don't have to give a reason. I'm not serving this person for whatever reason you may want to not serve them, right? Certainly in the gun industry, you have some hoodie wearing wannabe gangster lout come in, and I'm not necessarily just talking about stereotyping or people that wear hoodies, but you have that sort of gangster wannabe wander into your shop, and you're like, and you have a very, very good feeling that, you know, through their demeanor, through the language that they're using, through how they're coming across as a person, that anything you sell them is going to be used irresponsibly. You have a right to say, no, sorry, I'm not selling anything to you. You know, like you have that right, and it's dangerous to it's dangerous to then force people to doing business with people that they don't want to do business with. But when you're talking bank accounts, right, you know, something that is very fundamental to the running of a modern day business, I think there's more severity. There has to be a bigger thought process, and more protection. You can't just turn the lights off. You literally are just turning a business's lights off if you rip their bank account from them, right? And there has to be maybe a little bit more justification. You can refuse somebody, but you have to explain why, right? And it has to be measured, and perhaps there actually has to be some sort of I don't know. I've still got that in. Well, that feels odd after having that in all stream, waiting for Arian and talking to Arian. I think that when you're talking about potentially causing like financial ruin to a business, there has to be some sort of justification. There has to be some sort of test to make sure that it is justified, that it is, you know, it's not purely down to an irrational fear of guns. It's not purely down to the, you know, dislike of somebody's political opinions, right? And again, we're meant to live in a free society. We're meant to live in a place where we have, you know, protected freedom of speech, even though we don't. You know, it's very slippery slope to allow people's bank accounts to be closed, you know, their finances. You know, that's a tactic that our police use police and other, you know, here, America, across the world. You want to hurt a criminal, you hurt them in the pocket, right? You start seizing asset, you freeze accounts, and all of that causes untold issues for them. And it's a tactic that's been used for many, many years. And politically, that's what's happening to these people. Politically, that's what effectively is happening to these gun shops. Richard Wayne, gangster tweed, warm with attitude, may be my new business venture. Has anybody actually made a tweed hoodie? Tweed hoodie. How about that? That I'm not often a tweed wearer. Like I've had my moments. Let's there we go. I'll bring up what I just found. Tweed hoodie. I don't think they look too bad. That's not tweed. Waterproof tweed men's. I mean, that's not really a hoodie, is it? That's probably the closest thing to hoodie. I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting older here. I actually quite like that. It's not really tweedy, but that tweed hoodie. Huh. There we go. There's. I genuinely actually like that. Next. What are you? What? £420? Are they have 420? Yeah, no wonder. Jesus. I mean, I think it looks great. I'd love that at my next game shoot, but not for £420. Thank you very much. Jesus. What are you guys saying? Yes, it's been done before. Look at Canada and what they did to the truckers' protest. Defamation is a serious business and can be very difficult to address. Absolutely. What is the current approx weight for an FAC today? My application is my application anniversary. It depends where you are, but unfortunately, it is a how long is a piece of string. Shoot practical in tweed. Ariane, if you've got 420 quid, I will compete in the next. Well, actually, my next match is this weekend, and it's probably going to be very wet, so a tweed hoodie would probably do very, very well. If you want to buy me that 400, it's my birthday soon, by the way. If you want to buy me that 420 pound tweed hoodie, I will wear it at the next match, provided it's not like 40 degrees. Anyway, what's the current wait time for FACs? It's a how long a piece of string question, right? It depends where you are to begin with and how efficient they are, what the backlog is like. It can range anywhere. Some places are doing applications within a couple of months. Some are taking 18 months to 2 years. It really does depend. They really do. It's really inconsistent. You can use my imaginary salary. 420, someone must have been smoking something. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. But yeah, it is getting late. We've done a pretty late one tonight. Before all you guys go, hit that like button. Make sure you smashed it. It does make a huge difference to the channel. I do really appreciate it. Also, the subscribe channel, because we do try to do this every single week, and I will try to get more guests on. Perhaps we'll get Connors on as a guest in the near future, or maybe Paul or whoever's brave enough to come join the channel. But what I appreciate more than anything is all of you guys joining me this evening. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Hope you've all enjoyed Aaron as well. Let me know what you thought of it. If you want to see other people, or you just want to stare at me for an hour and a half, 2 hours every Thursday. And Facebook's saying that it's going to put some ads in. Probably not the best. That's just I'm saying my saying my goodbyes. But there we go, guys. Hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much for joining. Hope you've enjoyed it. We will see you next weekend, same place, same time, for the English Shooting live stream. Hope you all have a fantastic week ahead. And of course, as always, guys, I hope to see you soon.